Chair will entertain a motion for approval, denial, or whatever. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We don't have any members of the public here today, so I'm going to skip the next paragraph. Okay. So, we're gonna begin with case number,
Chair, may I make a suggestion?
I'm sorry, please.
So since we don't have the applicants here just yet, maybe they're running late.
So when I read it,
Well, maybe we could go to one of the discussion items.
I was going to go to the first item.
Well, the person isn't here.
Oh, they're not here yet. Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
Okay, so which one would you suggest?
The first item, they are requesting a deferral, but we have asked them to hear in person to make that request.
And they were here last month.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll see if they come.
And the second one?
The second person is not here
Okay.
either. And then for the good of the city, I would suggest maybe starting with the Sailboat Bend
Okay,
presentation,
that'd be great.
because I know a couple of people might show up for the TDR discussion.
Okay. I have to tell you, I was really impressed with Dover Cole's report on Sailboat Bend.
Yeah,
I thought it was excellent.
yeah, I'm not sure if everyone got a chance to take a look through it, but
And before we get done with introductory remarks, I just wanted to note that this is Richard Rose's last day, and he's been great on the board.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Last one. Last hurrah.
I think he was my first new board member when I started. How many years have you done?
Too many. 2 full terms. Yeah.
2 terms.
Yeah, but you've been a good voice for Sailboat Bend.
I hope so. We try to be. I think it was
Yeah.
fitting that we got this report on the day that we
Exactly.
So I finally saw it. It's
Yeah.
real.
Well, I didn't read it, but I skimmed through it,
No,
and it's
well done.
comprehensive.
And I think honestly, just because you pass the mic and it's an open discussion, right? It's just
Yeah.
so I think this is really well done. You know, the thing that was interesting towards the end of it is sort of prioritizing what comes first. But
Right,
you know, any of this will help. You know,
absolutely.
any of it will help.
Absolutely.
But I think there are bigger pieces that need to fall into place that probably fall outside the purview of the board. Like, for example, where the current parking is located that's been servicing the police station. A project of the type, I think that was way in the back, it was way towards the end. Anything like that to take away from what's there now as a void would be really big. I don't know how this was received with the Silver Bend Civic Association, but it goes all the way to page 42 is where they start
Right.
bringing it up. But all this scape stuff would go a long way.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I live on Second Court. I don't live there. I'm not gonna be there much longer, but I'm there now. And the flooding's atrocious in the
Yeah.
entire neighborhood. It all turns into just one big lake at a certain point.
Everybody says that when they come up to the board.
Right, but I guess to be like someone who's experienced the flooding, I don't think the flood mitigation is what's gonna change the neighborhood. I just don't.
Well, it'll help.
It'll help. It's not gonna hurt. I mean, no storm drainage
Well, I
management.
think that the premise of the report is there's so many different pieces
Yeah,
that they have to
For
work
sure.
simultaneously.
but I think exactly, and I think that's the problem. Do you become like sort of like stunted or paralyzed in the execution of things that need to all occur at once? And where
Well-
do you start with a meaningful
Look how long it took,
implementation?
look how long it took everyone from South Bend to get together and get the city to get a consultant. Because they kept coming to us saying, you guys should be doing this. I said, well, we don't do this.
I think the report gives a great framework. I really can't argue with anything that it's proposing. My argument has always been, how does it implement? How does someone
Of
spearhead
course.
it? And where are the funds allocated in order to be able
Well,
to
then
do
you'll
it?
be active in the next few steps.
You know, so that's the big question, I think, but I don't have any doubt there would be a major improvement if
Okay.
any of this were to happen.
Maybe we'll just go around the table, see if anyone has anything to say.
If you want, I can kind of go through the slides.
Oh, please. Oh, you had a
Sorry to jump
presentation.
So it's okay. So if you want to advance. So, you guys are all.
Just, you want to hear for which item?
Whatever, TDRs.
The TDR, okay. We're taking things out of order because of all the traffic, so this is Sailboat Bend.
We haven't done TV. So, you know, guys are familiar somewhat with the background of this report and how it came about. We did hire Dover Cole and Partners last fall to, do kind of this vision plan for the Sailboat Bend Historic District, and the Sailboat Bend Civic Association members of that group formed a smaller subcommittee called the Master Plan Committee, who came up with several different objectives and items that they would like for the consultant to review and look through. So they were looking to make some neighborhood improvements, some things that Richard already kind of mentioned as far as like streetscape design and the public realm, some flooding issues, preserving the neighborhood and the neighborhood character, and just kind of how do you preserve that with the introduction of new construction. We go to the next slide. So last fall, we hired a consultant. We had a kickoff meeting with them towards the end of August. We had several meetings with different stakeholders, including coming to the HPV in the fall. We also did a walk around with the Civic Association group throughout the entire neighborhood, which was great with the consultant, just to get a really good feel for the neighborhood. And we met with the commissioner for the district as well to talk about it. Then we did an open house in October. We did a follow-up survey from that open house, and then we've been in report preparation for quite some time. So now we're kind of circling back.
Tricia, will this come back to the HPV?
Probably won't bring it back because it's just, unless there's some major changes.
Well, just so we see the final,
We'll share it,
we'll
but
see, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we can share it once it's finalized.
that's all, yeah, I don't wanna hold
Okay,
the
no problem.
lengthy process up any further.
Yeah, so we're doing follow-up meetings now. We met with the Civic Association's Master Plan Committee last week. We met with the commissioner a couple of weeks ago. We're here today to get any feedback from you guys, and then we'll present to the commission probably in June.
Great.
So the open house, I don't recall if any of you came. I know some previous board members did come, like Richard Bray did come. We had several thematic stations that were set up in the History Fort Lauderdale building, and we had over 60 attendees that came, which is a great group that came and provided a ton of feedback. We had several interactive boards where they could leave comments, write notes. We have a few images of those. And then we had a follow-up survey that we got over 20 respondents from to kind of help prioritize some of the information. So
That's great input.
yeah, so these are images now from some of the feedback we received from the online survey, where we got additional comments, but also we're able to understand, you know, what is the priority for different tasks that we could ultimately work into the next steps. So the feedback kind of worked its way into developing 5 different themes for the report, and the report kind of is divided in this way as well. So focusing on sea level rise, streetscape design, community identity, planning, and parks and recreation. So that's kind of like how all of the next steps are divided and organized, and the themes are in order of the prioritization that was received as part of that follow-up survey that was conducted. So on the different topics for street elevation and structure elevation, street elevation was sort of mixed results as far as what the community thought of that concept. The consultant introduced an idea of how Miami does it, or Miami Beach does it. And it was sort of 50-50.
Yeah, I'm very
on that
familiar with that because I
Yeah.
was there when they were doing it.
Right,
And although they raised the street so it doesn't flood, the water goes down into towards the building. But they're supposedly using some kind of rapidly absorbing concrete that absorbs the water. So it won't go down as much. That's what I've been told.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea to raise the street so that the water just runs to the lots. If you don't have, there's no drainage at all there, so it's just gonna sit. So
Yeah. Well, and also, what do you do with the sidewalks and the approach to the houses and the businesses? Anyway,
Yeah, no problem. And then we also introduced the concept of structure elevation, which is something we've had a couple of applications for at this board that have been approved. I think the feedback from that was mostly positive, but also people wanted more information on how it would be done, especially with different types of properties and how it's actually feasible, also the cost that's involved in elevating structures.
You know, like lifting a house up in the air.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah.
So you take the foundation and
You
So we've had
raise,
some
elevate on top of the existing foundation.
right?
This structurally engineering,
Mhm.
a tremendous amount of research work
Yeah,
and probably
advanced
some sort
structural
of
engineering.
compliance before you could do something like that.
For sure. Yeah, so there's a lot of components to take into consideration. The two applications that we have received at this board have been for frame houses that you know.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
How much consideration was just given to improving the drainage system?
Implementing one.
We're starting on it.
Where's that part of it?
So we'll get to that.
Okay.
There is an ongoing project that's being done through Public Works to deal with the stormwater drainage issues in different neighborhoods. There's kind of two different groups of neighborhoods. They had a tranche one, which they're completing now, where they just started kind of the last neighborhoods that are included within that group. And then Sailboat Bend is included in tranche two. I'm not sure of the exact order that it will go in, but it has been discussed multiple times at the commission and at the conference meetings. Yep.
Who would be paying for all this to
So
raise the
it's part of-
houses?
Yeah, I mean, it's budgeted for.
It is.
Mhm.
For how many houses? I
Well,
mean,
no,
it
it's
can get
not
to
for
be,
elevating structures, it's for the stormwater improvements.
okay, so the building owner is responsible to raise?
No, it's part of a public works project.
Okay.
So they're looking at different neighborhoods one at a time to understand how they can fix some of the stormwater
Sure.
drainage issues, but it's neighborhood by neighborhood. They can take a look at where the flooding is occurring. This area, I don't know if you remember a few months ago, it was crazy with construction. That's what they were doing there.
But we're talking about something separate and apart from raising.
Yeah,
funds.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's
Kind of-
storm drain, it's just drainage.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
there's like one section of the neighborhood that has a
Yeah.
couple drains.
But you live there, so is there a way to do an improved storm drain to pump? I mean, obviously, if the canals or the bodies of water around it are full, you
Right.
can't pump it into
I'm
it.
not an engineer,
So
but
where's all
I
that
would think
stuff?
you could implement a drainage system,
Yeah,
yeah, just
I mean-
design for it, I don't know where you.
It's gotta
flush
go
the water
somewhere.
to. Yeah,
And it can't go it's gotta go to a lower level, so
Yeah.
to speak. So
yeah,
I'm just curious if that's even a possibility.
I can count two drains that I know of in the entire neighborhood. There might the ones on West Las Olas and 12th Ave, there's one on opposite corners, that's it. Yeah. Right?
And they're clogged up.
And they're clogged, yeah, they're
There's some
constant,
back in my neighborhood, there's a bunch, but
Okay.
I'm in the PUD.
right, and that was probably the PUD that put them in.
So
So-
that
We're
project,
speaking about Sailboat Bend now.
Yeah.
Yes.
so that project is kind of separate from this, and it's already in the works, it's already being planned for. And it wasn't really, it wasn't included in this aspect of the presentation. But it is listed as part of the next steps. Yeah. And then there was a, board for street design and intersection design and getting some feedback on that,
That's great.
those type of improvements. There were some kind of mixed reviews about incorporating chicanes along some of the streets to slow down the traffic. There was an intervention several years ago that just didn't quite work. And so I think there's some negative connotation related to that. There was also concepts related to complete streets.
You should look at Miami Beach where in the Art Deco district, instead of putting intermittent islands like that,
Uh,
they made bulb outs, as they
Yeah.
call them, at the intersections, and that really slowed the traffic down.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different approaches and it's something that would be eventually fleshed out in a larger plan, but just getting some initial feedback of like, which of these concepts do you like better? Which do you think would work in your neighborhood? And some comments related to that.
Just one other comment, then I'll be quiet.
Okay. No.
Somewhere in the very beginning, it lamented, the report lamented that there were no other cities of comparable experience in Broward County to what Fort Lauderdale's trying to do. And I would hope that they would go to other comparably sized cities in the country, just to see what else other people are doing anywhere, because cities are pretty
Yeah,
the same in
you might
many
be
ways.
talking about the TDRs. In the TDR staff report, it does talk about
Oh,
there's no other
oh,
city in Broward County, so it might be
Confused,
about
yeah.
that topic, but just, there were several different concepts laid out for people to weigh in on. And the report really identifies which ones the community liked better or had better perception on versus like 50 or too much, so that was really interesting to take a look at. There was also feedback received on the community identity and what that would mean, and also the planning element for the neighborhood, so developing more design guidelines and also exploring different like zoning concepts that kind of already exist today. We already have the ability to do mixed use within the neighborhood under certain zoning categories, but kind of further defining that and what that actually means or looks like. For parks, we got a lot of feedback, a lot of good information collected as part of the open house. And different ideas as far as like community gardens, exercise equipment, playgrounds, like where those would be going, and then different interventions related to like green design and green improvements. And then a few different locations were looked at specifically, like Richard had mentioned with the police station site, kind of that back side of it, what it could look like, how it could interact with the neighborhood, how you could potentially have a retention area included in any new development coming in the future.
What do you mean by a retention area?
So like for water.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Also related to the flooding topic. And then another site that was looked at was the old bar site, the Broward Addiction Recovery Center, that's along Southwest Second Street, and kind of what that could look like, and looking at that concept of community garden at the same time, like how that could be incorporated into a new development. There's a really nice illustrative plan that's within the report as well, that gives you a good overview of kind of the different concepts that were talked about throughout the report and where those would be located. And then ultimately, the last few pages focus on the next steps of how you would actually implement some of the ideas and concepts that were presented throughout the report and the feedback that was received. So within the sea level rise adaptation section, there's the Fortify Fort Lauderdale, which we were talking about with the stormwater improvements. That's being handled by Public Works. It's not something we're super involved with at all, but it has been initiated, it's ongoing. They typically will update the commission periodically on the progress of that. There's an idea of developing new design guidelines to elevate historic properties. There's also kind of working on a green infrastructure diagram, which would identify locations of where you could have bioswales or marshes or areas that could act as collectors for water. Also looking at potential funding sources for elevation of historic properties, and then the street raising elevation or street raising feasibility which was a study that was done previously, through ULI last fall, or last spring, actually. And they took a look at the city as a whole to understand like if it's actually something feasible with Fort Lauderdale, where that would be located, how it would be done. So there is a report that's available through Public Works on that. But if you do the stormwater improvements and maybe elevate properties, you need to elevate the streets, it kind of gets into maybe we'll need it, maybe we won't, or maybe it won't be something we actually will look at. But that's why it's more of a longer term effort. There's also streetscape design and intersection projects. There's a few things that are already underway, including a condition assessment for sidewalks and alleyways, roadways. That's already ongoing through Public Works, and they're finalizing their report. There's some planned improvements at the intersection of Southwest 14th Avenue for a raised intersection. It's at Middle Street and 14th. And there's some money through a grant that's been identified. But it's gonna be a couple more years until you get there. Another thing that's identified is a streetscape and intersection master plan, which would include a lot of elements that kind of would be big picture items and talk more about like how the streetscape could look, how we could make something more pedestrian friendly, how it could be a better public realm. And then the next would be to look at how you could also do the same thing like is planned at 14th Avenue, at West Las Olas and Southwest 11th Avenue, to kind of create more of like identity within the neighborhood.
Just one really quick question.
Yeah.
Why would it take a number of years to just, on item 2, to improve 14th Ave?
So
and get the sidewalks installed?
it's the funding, it's
Yeah.
the way that like ramp works, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm not,
the city wouldn't be willing to put a measure of good faith into the idea that it'll be obtained, and it's like if I pull a driveway permit, I've got to put a sidewalk in. I
yeah.
don't get to tell them it's gonna be in a few years where I'll get to the sidewalk.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think a lot of the projects that happen kind of through CIP, they do
Yeah.
take a number of years to get work into
got it.
the project
'Cause it's-
anyway, but this is specifically funded through that penny tax.
Yeah, because there is not a sidewalk on Middle Street after you go east of 14th Ave. So it's just like common sense. I'm not saying prioritize it around a grant, but it's like, this was the whole scenario in my mind when this whole master plan came together. It was like, just do one thing instead of trying to do everything at once, because then it stalls. It starts to,
Mhm.
and then it's crazy because that's like that's a through street, right? So like all the cars are flying. So even if you just have to walk there and you want to walk there, you're stuck like kind of in a de facto Broward Boulevard, and it's tough. All right, just a quick one. What grant is it? A county grant or it's a state
It's
grant?
through the county surtax grant.
Okay.
And then it can, like our transportation and mobility
Got it.
department. And then for community identity, we have a grant right now for interpretive sign and a walking tour in the Salvo Bend Historic District. And that's ongoing, that's something we have current funding for. And then kind of exploring different key entrance signage throughout the neighborhood. Like the archway that was included as a rendering within the initial documents that were provided by the Civic Association. And then just working on different things that could highlight historic preservation and cultural elements within the district. Planning for new development, we kind of mentioned this before with some of the design guidelines for different housing types, and then exploring feasibility for updating the text in the ordinance to expand and clarify what a neighborhood serving commercial use would be with like that mixed use opportunity. And then there's several different things outlined with parks and recreation as far as just like different planting options, alleyway improvements, and then specific projects within parks and what could be implemented in them. And that's really it. So if you guys want to go around, if you have any discussion or questions.
Anybody want to jump in?
So what happens through like what would be an implementation? How does it implement from here? I realize this is a draft, so it goes here at P and Z commission, right? As far as this?
No, we won't take it to planning and zoning board,
Okay.
we'll take it to city
Straight.
commission just for conference.
Okay. So
For
it gets,
conference presentation, we're getting feedback and
so who's responsible to just allocate anything that's non-grant for all of this? Where does the money come from?
so it would have to be allocated. So this is really a tool used by the city commission to, you know, say we want to prioritize certain things within this
Gotcha.
plan. To move it forward and actually assign funding to it or work towards for the different departments or different methods.
And who would spearhead as the advocate or representative of Sailboat Bend to be able to make that position of here, because it's beautifully presented, but someone
Yeah, so
has
like
to,
for example, the streetscape
right,
master plan is something that, you know, it's kind of partially how this conversation started.
Yeah.
And so, I've written a request for funding for that and it's going through the budget system.
gotcha.
I don't see it after it leaves my desk
Okay.
until I'm told if it's funded or not.
Just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
what did you request as an amount?
I think it changed after, so I think initially we asked for 100,000, but then I don't know what it is today.
So they changed 200,000, right?
Right. Could go up, could go down. But sometimes like maybe even the civic association, like we want to prioritize this and maybe they
Yeah.
request that specifically to be something we're looking at more strongly.
Just would be nice if it wasn't a tranche two again, if it was a tranche one, just sort of move it through and at least implement one measure of it to start some attempt at momentum.
Do these kind of master plans typically have like one person who's spearheading everything, whether it's somebody from the community or?
So like with our Himmershey area, like some of it kind of like directed towards me to say like to do certain tasks within it. It was prioritized within the plan as well, so it's something like me, myself, the staff, I'm looking back at and saying, you know, this was something that was kind of outlined as this is the next priority and this is the like the direction we should be heading in. So we worked on the architectural resource survey for the area. We have asked for some funding to do a tactical urbanism project there along Himmershey. So we do like temporary installation of different interventions along the street to see and test out, you know, what works, what doesn't, and then create more of like a permanent plan for, you know, any streetscape improvements along there. And then there's also some text amendments that would also kind of coincide with that. And there was also an identification of the need to kind of have a better stronghold over the governance of the special entertainment district. So that's another item that's also being currently worked on. So there's things that are worked into that vision plan that we're kind of tackling piece by piece.
Yeah.
Some of it isn't necessarily in planning's wheelhouse and would have to be kind of requested outside of us, but.
One of the things we've talked about over the years has been to provide different zoning for the entertainment district versus the neighborhood. Because there's such different uses and we always run into issues with the code. How do we do that?
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot, but we haven't done anything about it.
Yeah, there's different avenues that could be taken with updating the code.
Well, maybe a suggestion to the planners to see what they think and if that should be incorporated.
Yeah, there's always conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure, so always something to look into.
Was there ever any thought to implement, like, not quite a CRA, but like a measure of, let's say I want to build a new courtyard quadplex in Sailboat Bend. and my permit fees are $25,000. Having any allocation of a percentage of that would not go straight to the city, but would go into a special fund that could then fund the streetscape. So it's a direct, I know we're getting outside of the purview here, but like there's, what I see, Tricia, because I've been here a long time, is everyone's got ideas. They implement. This is the most materially significant
Right.
piece of that idea coming to fruition right in front of us. Where I just don't have the faith that it's going to take the next step is that there's no money. And if there's no creativity to how you fund something, there's just the likelihood of an outcome falling flat. So I'm not asking you that question. I'm posing it so it's in the public forum. To like, come on, give some element of tit for tat. Like put it in play. All right, take $25,000 from a developer for a permit fee, but then reroute 20% of that to the streetscape fund so it happens. And then when it fills, implement a streetscape. Like go do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just, it's sort of.
I know there's a lot of limitations, I'm not as well versed, and this is where, like, my ideas also have
Yeah.
blocked, where there's limitations on how you can utilize funds, especially like permitting fees.
It may not exactly be earmarked as a permit, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, because believe me, like the permit fees have not gone down, and a lot of the sub permits have continued to just they're just there and they're there and they're there and they're there, and you don't have a choice, you have to pay them. But it would be amazing to see permit fee being paid for in this neighborhood with an improvement that then goes back into the neighborhood, because it's always been tranche two. I've been here a long time. It's always been, that's just where it settled. Like, I don't know how, why, when, but that's where it was and that's where it's been. And I'm not losing faith that it could change, but without the incentive monetarily.
Well, wouldn't now be the time?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
To
I don't know
begin
how to tie it to this.
investigation?
If you
I don't
have,
either,
if you have a
yeah.
way to tether it. I have no clue
Well,
on
can
how to
we
tighten it up.
send a communication to somebody or say something in a motion?
I mean, you can always send communication to
Yeah,
the city
okay,
commission.
yeah.
As you wish, but
Are we charged right now with just reviewing this and making a recommendation to the city on whether or not we find this to be a good idea?
there's really no
Just discussion.
requirement.
No, it's just a
Okay,
review.
just discussion. So, but I really like what I'm hearing from Richard, because it's something that it's kind of like that's a baseline for a lot of stuff that we talk about.
Right.
I know
And it
your
all comes
city
back to
attorneys would
money.
wanna weigh in on it,
Sure.
but I'm pretty sure there's some limitations on how you can use money that's collected for permitting.
Okay.
But there's so many things in this that make sense. However, I couldn't agree more with Richard that there's so much to look at. Couldn't we just recommend it? We prioritize two. And, vision on drainage and public safety, which is the drainage. If you did all these things and you still have a 4-foot puddle, and you wasted all your time. I can't believe that we don't have sidewalks in an area of the city that's always referred to as historic. We're trying to make this into white. I mean, isn't there something in the city books that says that the city's responsibility to sidewalks is it has to happen? I mean, why is there no sidewalk on that street? That to me, I find that to be like, how does that just continually go on and on and on? And we're discussing where are we going to get money for a sidewalk on a city street?
And they're going to
I mean,
the
what kind of-
county
yeah,
to get
exactly.
funds,
So-
right. No,
So I guess, without us getting out of our realm
Right.
and what our responsibility is, what's our recommendation?
Just to maybe bring this to a head, although never happens, is perhaps there's some way while they're doing this report to incorporate what Richard has been saying, is that investigate how can they be funded? I mean, they have everything, all these choices here. Aren't there choices in funding?
So I used to work for the City of Atlanta's Development Authority, and they used tax increment financing districts. And they would take a plan like this and convert it to a redevelopment plan. And then they would go to the city, county, and school board and ask to freeze the current tax base. And then they would project the increase in tax value. And they would take that future increment and bond against it and create multi-millions of dollars worth of money. And then the increment of the tax revenue would go to pay back the bonds. But then basically the city gave developers 10% grants to develop in underserved areas.
Okay,
So it was the incentive for the developer to
Right.
say, okay, I'll go ahead and take on where I.
but it's these kind of ideas that I think need to come out of the planning portion of this visioning plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think each of the items that is listed within the next steps would have its own kind of like methodology of how would you fund this?
Right.
And kind of taking a look at different options to do that. This particular plan had a limited budget as well,
Sure.
so
It was privately,
Yeah.
what was it privately, who allocated did the city allocate funds for the
city
plan?
allocated
They did. How much?
25,000.
Okay,
For the
there's plenty
state?
involved. I mean,
It's a pretty low amount,
yeah,
and
but it got,
use it,
Is that for this report?
yeah, for this report.
Yeah, hi, sorry.
you gotta swear in.
I have to swear the public in because we didn't. The Liberty City Attorney,
Not for the discussion item.
not for discussion,
Yeah, so she's up here.
jumping,
Okay, no, I need to say my name.
yeah.
Well,
Yes,
Maggie Hunt Sibbleton, Richard, I really appreciate your input and Arthur also. I mean, I think we ought to make note of these things and I would also invite you guys, Richard, and I know Sean, you live in Sailboat too?
Shane, yeah.
Shane, we have a master planning committee that tries to stay on top of this. We could use 2 more members. And then you could be the ones on top of this with us, you know?
I hear you. I
And-
appreciate the invitation.
And that would be great, you know, you guys are both bright guys and I have a lot of great ideas. Also, I just wanted to mention, like with the sidewalks, Tim, it's not only that we don't have any, if you walk down past the chimney house, we have telephone poles in the middle of the sidewalk this wide. And that's part of the reason we did all this, because the city asked us to pay a lot extra to redo our homes a certain way because we're historic, and yet there's no investment to make it look like a historic neighborhood, right?
yeah, but Maggie, one thing, just not to interrupt you, but all of those items were really taken care of in the report, I thought very well.
Yeah, they
And right
were.
before you walked in, we were reviewing all of them.
Yeah, so they were. So I just wanted, because you had talked about it, I just wanted to let you know that's
Sure.
fine. Also, just a really quick thing on that, a retention area, it's not just a retention area because there was a toxic pollution running into the canal that goes out to New River. And there's a kayak dock there and there's a bunch of barriers in the water there to try and contain that pollution. So that's not just a retention area, it's supposed to clean the water. And I think the city's gonna do something to try and mitigate that also. There was one last thing that you guys mentioned. Oh, I wanted to just let you know what happened right before the flood. Green Year routine, if you clean the drains out, you get money for the neighborhood, right? So ironically, 3 days before that flood, I went and cleaned all the junk out of the drains around the condos there, the Village of Sailboat Bend. So then it rained. The next night, that street, 13th Avenue, was a fast river with water that much going straight from the police station to the river. And then when it was all over, those drains were all full of mud. So I think that helps. I mean, even with extra drains, I don't know if that mitigates. And maybe Nancy
Well-
Gassman is somebody we need to talk to see how they want to mitigate this.
Well, that'll be part of the process, so, thank you.
But maybe the nexus is to tie this into TDRs, because if the TDRs are coming to the neighborhood, then maybe there's an allocation of where there's a sensible way to codify how that would work to raise money. Because the TDRs are not off limit in the way that permit fees are. And I would invite the city attorney to express why permit fees are off limit, but if that's an accepted black and white conclusion, then why aren't the TDRs if we're amending what we have in place and it's not against putting forth, if there are TDRs that come out of Sailboat Bend, how that can then reroute streetscape or improvement funding or something that would then go back in. Because it always seems to be taking, it never gets back around. And like literally the sidewalk has a telephone pole coming out of it,
Well,
it's crazy.
People can declare their houses as historic and they can get the TDRs. Perhaps.
But that, we're gonna go
Yeah,
there,
I
but
know.
I'm saying scraping off that, an additional, call it allocation, whatever, you know, something that would be able to be real, tangible, like, okay, you're gonna transfer a TDR.
Right,
The acquisition, the person buying the TDR also has to put $1,000 in the streetscape fund. It's a tax, whatever you wanna call it, I don't know how you
I
wanna
think
codify
that's
it.
great,
Right.
yeah.
Because if you're gonna go to play for that, and
Right.
where's it going? It's going in some way, shape, or form into a rack environment, or it's going into a developer's stack, right? They're gonna put it into a development. Part of doing business. If you wanna go back and
I
put
think
it
you
in.
should be on this committee.
I just think it should be accounted for before we keep going through this and like this, this is great, this looks good, but like, where does it ever land back there? Because I'll tell you how it changed. When we got the park finally, on Waverly, that changed it a little bit. And believe me, there's no improvements in there. It's a tree. It's a banyan tree park. That's all that's there. So that alone changed it.
Okay,
All of a sudden, the roundabout looks a little cleaner. All of a sudden, the park across the street looks a little cleaner. And that's with just having the real estate acquired.
sure.
It had nothing to do with, believe me, it doesn't look like Riverside Park. So if that's the tell, find a way to raise money, find a way to get the revenue, because otherwise, unfortunately, I think we could come back here in 10 years and I don't know if it's gonna change.
How will these discussions get back to Dover Cole?
So we're pretty much out of funding, so anything that would be modified moving forward would really.
But I think it's important to get these comments clarified to them, so it's on the record, that's all.
What, like, isn't there a piece of this over, like, they put together the plan, is what it is now on the cities.
Right, it's on the city
It's
to
almost like,
fund it.
right, and the civic association could take the baton and run with it, but like, what are you running with if you have nothing to spend money on? Like,
I
you
know,
know, you can't
I
call anyone and say, hey, come fix our street, we'll pay you in fruits and berries. They're not gonna come, so. I think it's just time to.
But
pick
I
up.
think some
Someone's-
of these ideas are good enough to retain.
If I believed in good conscience that there could be like a way to get the money, I would take a more.
Understood,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's still time that needs to be spent to do this. And when you don't have a partner, whether it's a municipality or
Sure.
some other de facto way to raise money, what are you gonna accomplish? That's the frustration, that's where it gets hard.
So we're talking about nothing.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that much, but without
It would make it
funding.
different, that's for sure. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. It's like, nobody likes to go to a restaurant and look at the menu and know that you can't afford anything. Doesn't do much for your appetite. So the discussion is great, the vision is great, but at the end of the day, how's it gonna get paid for? And how do we, if it's our job, it seems like there needs to be some prioritization to all these options. And put it in an order of implementation so that something doesn't get done that has to be redone.
Well, that's not
on the
our
other
job,
thing.
though.
But that's not our job, but at this point, I just think working with the Sailboat Bank community and this nice lady who's passionate about it, just how do we help them get this in front of the commission and say, look, it's time for you to make a financial commitment to this neighborhood. I think that's what I would like to say.
So practically, what should we do, make a communication to the city commission and ask them to prioritize a couple of things on this and.
Work with this neighborhood association and make a commitment to whatever priorities they can arrive at between the two.
Work with a funding professional and the neighborhood association.
Are the TDRs open market? Who sets the price for the TDRs? The parties, right?
I'm not quite sure about that one.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's
Buyer and a
private real
seller,
estate
they privately,
transaction,
right?
yeah.
So if we're amending that, right, and we're looking at a review of the ordinance in which the amendment comes together, right? I just find it, and I can't cite to a city that's done this or anything else, but I find it hard to believe that there's all this flexibility in how this is being codified. And how there can't be a clear understanding of where what I'm describing as a situation factors into it. Where think of it like a dock stamp tax. You've done a deal, now it needs to be papered, now it needs to be recorded. In order for it to be recorded, there's gotta be a fee that comes, I don't care if it's paid by the buyer or the seller, that goes back into the kitty, so then it gets paid out and it starts to fund something that's there. And all of a sudden, people start to see it, it starts to become real. I don't know if there's limitations on that legally. I don't know why there would be, certainly that's, I'll defer to the city attorney on if that's viable. But I think it kind of like segues out of sailboat into TDR to how this monetizes, how it becomes real, how it becomes something that can be tangible. Because without it, they're out of money. So now what? Now you gotta find some way to
Any
do it.
initial comments or?
Oh, sure. Dwayne Spence, interim city attorney. So in the state of Florida, anything that taxes, we're not authorized to levy taxes unless authorized by law. things that a municipality can tax for. The other revenue that we gain, the regulatory fees which are the building permits, but those fee that you costs are to be proportionate to the services received from paying those fees. Similarly, we have impact fees that can be levied on development based on the impact that it has on the community, and that has to have a nexus to the impact that that development has. Or a discussion in regards to the tax increment that in Florida that's done through CRAs. We have adopted a ordinance recognizing it's not really a tax increment, but it's kind of a tax abatement type situations that we have adopted in certain circumstances where we recognize the value that was added by the project and agree to, if the formula will agree
Right.
to refund the developer or rebate a certain amount of that tax.
How can we insert into this discussion between the city, the public and sailboat band, and the planners? Hopefully more money would be voted for them to incorporate one or more of these ideas that we've been talking about today. And I'm sure there's others that are out there.
But I think this is the first step in terms of you have the report and then you have your comments and you have some.
So who should these comments go to?
Yeah.
Well, you'll have the listing. Sorry.
If there's anything specific that you do want to request, you can always send a communication to the city commission to state what that exactly is. But some of the smaller projects that are outlined within the next steps, it is more appealing to sometimes ask for funding for a smaller amount than one large amount over a period of years. So then you can start to chip away at some of the projects. Some of them are VIP funded, and those need to be prioritized kind of in a different way. So there's just different methods for each type of task that's outlined.
Dwayne, does the nexus for the impact fee have to be such that the impact is as a result of the impending project that's coming?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, so actually the state statute was amended a couple of years ago to make certain that the development that's paying into the impact fee is specifically benefited by their payment. So they make you tie it directly to that now.
So what would be defined as, like, for example, I'm taking TDRs from Sailboat Bend and I'm taking them to Coley Hammock. I'm taking them within 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Is there a mileage?
Yeah.
What would be the, so the,
Well, it depends on the improvement. So we
Okay.
have a parking pack fee and we just kind of relied on case law to determine what value type of park would be. Lead study of how the improvement that you're making benefits the project that's paid into it. But the discussion that you're getting to is a little bit more complicated in terms of, so are you suggesting, like, let's say school impact fees, whatever?
right,
Anything.
You have the TDR that are affecting a particular neighborhood, the impact fee should be assessed for wherever the actual development is going to be.
So it should be at the receiving site.
the issue I take with that notion, and it's I accept it exactly as you said it out, is that we're allocating impact fees to areas that don't need them from a park standpoint, from a school standpoint. Whereas where they're being taken from are pretty badly need for those investments in infrastructure. And that's unique maybe to this fact pattern, but regardless, that's what it is.
But that's an interesting way to look at it
You know?
and think about.
So why should it always be that status quo if, here's where it comes down to. Sailboat Bend has historic preservative guidelines, and if you don't know how to navigate them, they could be very intimidating. In some cases, I'll use the word difficult, that's a good broad way to put it. We ask people to abide by them, and if they don't, they have to come in after the fact. If you're gonna be asked to do all of that, if you're gonna be kind of put forth on stage to be able to put an application in, I'm just trying to find some latitude to how to get more revenue into the system, into Sailboat Bend, that otherwise wouldn't be there. And if now we're gonna go to a TDR conversation, it just makes sense to me to say, if these TDRs are going to Flagler Village, just for conversation's sake, I don't think anyone could sit here with a straight face and say that Flagler Village needs to be built up more. It's certainly kind of caught itself in the last 10 years. Sailboat Bend hasn't seen anywhere near this type of improvement. And I just don't know how to solve for it. That's all I'm trying to
Sailboat
do.
Bend would not be a receiving site for the most part.
I understand that.
It would be a sending site.
But I'm trying to flip the logic of how the funds get allocated, because Dwayne had mentioned that the impact fee is to be tied to the area in which it's going. I'm saying why? Why? Because the
Yeah.
area in which it's going and where they want to earmark them, they no longer need them.
That's true.
They don't. So where are they going? Do they at some point rebound back to a fund? I don't know, a general fund? I have no idea.
But the argument in terms of, like, say, for example, Park, if you're building a, 200 unit apartment.
Yeah.
Like you're saying that those individuals need to have access to park amenities,
Right.
whereas they took those 200 units from Sailboat Bend, arguably Sailboat Bend no longer needs those amenities. Those individuals are no longer residing in that.
Those individuals never resided.
Right.
Right. So that's a bit, I think we're getting, I don't know, there's
Yeah.
nuance there, but those 200 individuals probably would never reside in Sailboat Bend, because I think that the practicality of density there is very, very low. You know, the ability to get these sites built up is probably, barring something drastic occurring with the guidelines, probably never gonna happen. But consequently, we're just being told we're the only neighborhood in the entire city without a literal park, like a park with a slide or a set of swings. We're being told that you can't have sidewalks until we have a grant from the county.
So I think you're arguing for a different type of impact that's occurring as a result of the transferring out of the units, and that's novel. But I think there is a path to argue that because we are preserving these structures and transferring the development rights out, and the amenities that would rightfully have ended up in this community are no longer here. We're impacted by this. I think take some thought to develop it, and it's so novel that you might be challenged by it, but
And that's the time.
but it's an incentive though for transferring.
Sure.
You don't have to get the development rights that you're seeking. So I think you can probably build something robust off of that.
I think it's just a matter of how it materializes, whether it's a nexus to an impact fee or a TDR. I'm not gonna use the word tax cost. Some element of finding revenue in a transaction that otherwise would not occur in order to allocate that revenue back into the neighborhood. And I don't need to be as technical.
No, but I think you made your point.
That's it.
And I don't wanna halt this discussion, but we have a lot more on the agenda.
Sure.
And this is coming back to us, isn't it?
No.
This issue?
Well,
Okay.
this is the plan, the vision plan for the sale for Sailboat Bend.
Yeah.
This is being presented as is. We're getting more feedback right now. We will be taking it to the city commission at some point. I know the Civic Association's master plan committee is continuing to look at it, and we'll make some updates as needed. We'll share the final document with you, but it wouldn't necessarily come back for a vote.
Okay,
So maybe we just ask that whenever you guys present it to the city commission, that we highlight some of the things we talked about.
well, why don't we just send a communication to the city commission?
Yeah, I mean, I guess whatever you guys think is more appropriate, if it should be presented all at once with, hey, here's this plan, we think items A, B, and C should be prioritized, or if we send a separate communication, I don't know.
Well, at least if we get in a community, somehow, some kind of communication to tell them what we're talking about, so that as they consider the next step, which is certainly going to include funding, some of our ideas may percolate. I just want to get the ideas out there. I don't want them to die right here. And we've had a number of good suggestions in the minutes. So maybe we could formulate a letter from those points.
Yeah, the best way is for you guys to put together a communication to the city commission. That can't necessarily relay
Understood.
particular request of the board.
Okay.
I just wanna know the order, to verify the order. Once it leaves us today, does it go to the commission and then come back to us?
Doesn't come back.
In a final review, you had said we're gonna
We're
look
not-
at it.
No,
I mean,
One
at
more
this
time.
time, my direction is not to take it through a particular adoption process. So we're just putting it out as far as information to utilize.
it's for review and comment.
So we would just
Yeah.
say we think it's a good idea or not a good idea?
So, if you view it as a helpful vision document, planning document, I think that would be part of what you communicate in. And also, some of the ideas that you have developed from that document that you need that as well. And if that is the case, it may be something that you look to bring up on occasion as a continuing
Reminder.
reminder or guide in terms of what you're looking for. If this is the vision that you're adopting for cities looking to adopt for South Bend, and this is going to be a guiding document, maybe that's what you commission that we agree or disagree with this document. Find it to be a good planning document, vision. We have some ideas of how to implement it that we in the coming months will review and take a piece of it and communicate to you all.
We'll have you take a look at it before we send. What issue are you here for today?
The TDR.
You're for the TDR, okay.
Me too.
And you too, and none of our clients showed
No,
up today.
the applicants haven't arrived, so want to move on to the TDR.
Let's do the TDR.
I mean, I don't know if we did or we didn't.
Are we making
Went by
a communication
osmosis.
to the city on this?
It would require a motion, so someone needs to formulate.
Because if we don't, we just,
communication.
I'm happy to make the
No,
motion,
no.
but I'm not here for any of the
Okay,
follow-ups.
I know,
If you
well,
want me to make it,
if you
I'll
make,
it,
if you
but
make
I'm-
the motion
Okay,
and put the words in the
do
motion,
my best.
I'll put
Yeah.
together the,
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to the city on the issue of the Silva Bend presentation.
vision plan.
The vision plan, and emphasize that it seems to be the board was pleased with what the report stated and showed. And you can feel free to modify this, but we
Right,
would like to see more of a concrete avenue explored in order to allocate funds for the particular vision that's shown. I'll keep it that
but
simple.
funds that can get back to
That can be rerouted
improvements
to the
in the
city.
neighborhood.
To the city, to the Silva Bend Historic. District.
Okay, I think that's all we need to say.
That's how I would
I'll,
distill it.
I'll elaborate on this.
a second motion.
There you go.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you.
Jane,
No
you're
problem.
clear?
Yes.
And then, so we'll get started on.
I'll get
TDR.
something to you, yeah.
What's that?
Well, you said it had to come from the board,
That is what is sent to
That's
the
really-
board.
so it'll come from Richard, okay.
No.
Just gonna send it.
Jamie's gonna.
Oh,
write it up, but
okay.
I'm just,
I'd like to see
Future.
it before you send it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it will be whatever Richard expressed,
Right.
and then it will be.
Well, I wanted to elaborate on it.
Well, you can do it right now and then.
You gotta do it when we reach the.
All right, you made the motion, it's fine.
So Arthur, if you would like, I can let you know when, and if it's at the pleasure of the board, I can let you know when it's scheduled for the city commission conference meeting. And you can be the representative for the HPV. And usually that is recommended to have someone from the board be there to answer questions and.
Call Richard out of retirement.
Email me, I'll come up as a member of the public.
Yeah, I mean, he's very persuasive,
Just
being
email
from
me,
the
I'll come up.
neighborhood.
Are they still meeting up at the art museum?
No, right now we're at the Broward
Or
Center.
Broward Center, yeah.
Even closer.
You should go echo it though.
Oh, pardon?
When the I've done it once before, when the communication goes to the commission.
Yeah, you should go there.
There's a rep, you've done it.
I haven't done that
No,
one,
someone
yeah.
used to do it all the time.
Richard.
Richard used to do it all the time.
Yeah.
You go
He's
and-
usually.
Okay,
volunteer.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's supported, great,
So,
and maybe a member from the public can
Sure.
support me.
If I'm around, I'll be
it's
there.
most likely would be the June 3rd
Okay,
meeting.
you'll let us know as we get
Yeah.
close.
I will let you know.
So, transfer of development rights?
Yes. So,
Pardon?
We vote.
Yes,
We
yeah.
did vote, it
We
was
did.
unanimous.
so this has come to the board a few times as far as the amendments to the ordinance. We've been discussing it for several months off and on. We took a little bit of a pause over the last couple of months just to kind of refocus some of the elements and explore different options. And this is kind of all initiated by the Historic Preservation Board about a year and a half ago. But just as a refresher, there are two components to the TDR process. The first component is the certificate of eligibility, which is what a historic property would apply for, to understand how much development rights they have to transfer to a new development. So that's the first step in the application process. It's relatively straightforward as far as providing the information and getting the certificate of eligibility issued, which is reviewed by staff.
In the last slide.
Mhm.
At the very top, the third line, applied for by the sending state, historic resource.
Uh-huh.
Spelled wrong.
Uh-oh. We'll fix that.
Record.
Oh, uh-oh. On this one.
Sorry, I always catch
No,
that
thank
thing.
So this is the second part of the process, which is the certificate of transfer. And it's a little bit more of a lengthy process because there's the two parties that are entering into an agreement to sell the property rights or the development rights from the sending site to the receiving site. There's an application that would need to be completed, completeness review. It does go to our administrative review committee to take a look at the documents. And then if there's any comments, those would be sent back, to be addressed, and then the certificate of transfer is issued and recorded.
Sounds exhausting.
There are a few steps, there's several that happen internally, and then it's then ultimately it would be on the applicants to record the documents with the county. There's a few things that the last time we had this discussion that were further explored and implemented into the updated draft. And I know you received the draft later today, so I'm
Right.
sure you haven't had time to look at it. But this is what we wanted to kind of introduce these ideas and topics, get some feedback today, and then bring it back for a vote next month.
Okay.
So the first thing that we looked at, and I'll go in more detail in the coming slides about this, is updating the receiving areas for density, where we break down the different zoning districts rather than having a large area that was described within the code. For the certificate of eligibility, and change from 18 months for an expiration date to 24 months. A calculation for TDRs from the sending sites that would include a bonus, and the word dropped off from that sentence.
I have a question, should I ask you now or wait till the end?
You can ask me now.
Okay. I was disappointed in this report in that it concentrates so much on the receiving sites. It misses, for me, an obvious opportunity to save some of our important buildings, because if you look at what the city has as the list of, I don't know what you call them, there's so many different names, historic structures, historic buildings. There are hardly any mid-century buildings. I mean, none of our noted buildings, like, Sea Tower, Las Olas Club, Manhattan Tower, Times Square Center, Yankee Clipper, nothing is included.
Well, so
And that's a
that's
great way. I just wanted to say that it's a great way to increase the supply of receiving sites and also save a lot of these historic structures.
Yeah, it can be a really good tool to use TDRs to assist in the preservation of buildings. The actual designation of a historic site or structure would be done obviously in a different avenue, but to some degree, making the TDR program more appealing to a developer can bring more demand for the TDRs on the historic.
And I think it would be give less opposition to declaring a building as historic
Right.
if it becomes a receiving site, ascending site.
So I'll keep going. Is that okay?
Please.
Yeah. And then we also looked at the ability to transfer floor area to increase floor plate size at a receiving site. The ability to transfer more than 10 units per acre, which is how it's written today in the current code. And the ability to retransfer TDRs from a site once the certificate of transfer is complete. On the first transfer, you can retransfer again. Then there's a few other miscellaneous updates. There was some updates to the Broward County Land Use Plan earlier this year or late last year, and that was implemented just to be consistent with that language, and then just some updates to some definitions, some text edits throughout the document. So for the receiving areas for density, right now it says it's the flexibility zone, which is kind of just a large area through the center of the city that's meant for redevelopment, and it also runs along the major corridors like Federal Highway and then the east-west corridors as well. So instead of having the large area identified as the receiving area, we would break it down into different zoning districts focusing on the RAC and some of the zoning districts like the business zoning districts throughout the city.
Might it be more helpful to identify each one of these districts
Like with the name, like what the
with a name? What
Yeah.
is it? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is
No,
just for the ordinance, right?
Yeah. Right.
Is that the name of the district? Like how you have them listed?
Well, it's the Regional Activity Center.
There's a long name that goes
Regional
with the
Activity
letters.
Center, Urban Village. So they do have
Do you
like
think
kind
it'd
of a
be
name.
better for purposes of?
Well, I don't know how many people know these codes verbatim. Speaking of the
Yeah, I mean, these
commissioners.
are the zoning districts. So these would be just the areas that would be the receiving zoning districts
Right.
throughout the city. But we can certainly take a look at that and see if like and spell it out.
I always like to spell it out for commissioners because they may not know all the details.
I mean, that should be pretty easy for them to figure out.
I hope so.
I mean, the rest of the ordinance has the same kind of
Yeah, the current,
abbreviation, so I think we should
Nomenclature.
definitely keep it consistent.
Whatever you guys think.
all right. I think in the staff report I did spell it. But
I'm just looking at the draft of it.
Oh,
and then just as a kind of a reference back to the zoning districts that are within the unified flexibility zone,
there you are.
this actually spelled it out.
Yes.
But it's showing you with the highlighted zoning districts are the ones that are included within the new receiving areas versus the zoning districts that are not included in the receiving areas, but are also located in the unified flexibility zone. So there's just a few zoning districts that are kind of like excluded, but they probably wouldn't have necessarily received density anyway. This is just a quick map that shows what those areas are throughout the city. And there's just a little closer up version on the northern side of the city. So you have like the uptown urban village, the federal highway corridor that has locations included. And then this is the southern portion of the city showing those receiving areas.
I can't remember, was there a map that shows the sending sites?
Yeah, I mean, those are historically designated properties.
Right.
Yeah, so we have that.
Getting back to my point earlier, is there any way to increase the number of historic sites? Because there were a lot of different categories.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to designate their property, we have a process for designation, and we have been conducting architectural resource surveys over the past several years
Right.
that have identified quite a number of properties. But that does not,
You don't have the control.
yeah,
Okay.
we don't designate property. So the other thing that we updated is to include a calculation for density. Instead of there's not really a calculation for properties that don't have a number of dwelling units assigned in their zoning district, like an RMM 25 units per acre. So if it's a residential zoning district, that's already incorporated and assigned to the property. But for zoning districts that are within a pool, they don't have that same unit. So we came up with a formula to kind of calculate that number rather than having to produce drawings to indicate how many units could be included. And then also provided an additional 25% bonus to add to the number of units that is calculated. And that would be dependent on the availability of units that are in the flexibility pool. So if there's none left, then there's no bonus. But if there are some left, then there could be a bonus. Is there any questions on this? And just because words are hard to understand in the calculation, here's kind of a breakdown of what that formula would look like, kind of step by step how you would actually calculate it. So using an FAR of 3 multiplied by the square footage of the parcel itself, and then divide that by an average unit size. I think it's actually, we changed it to 725. So one number off. And then you would subtract any existing units and then add that 25% bonus.
Are you able to have partial units?
No, it would be maybe round down. And then the other concept that's introduced is the increase in tower floor plate size. And this would be the ability to transfer floor area to expand on that the tower floor plate size by 15%. So it's breaking it down to the chart by what the floor plate size limitation is based on where you are in a regional activity center and what that increase would be with 15% taken into consideration. And the areas that would be receiving sites for this this increase would just be the regional activity centers. And then just breaking it down again in the different areas, there's the increase in height that can be incorporated by a receiving area versus the increase in floor plate size. So there's a few more options for the height increase, but there's floor plate size limitations within the regional activity centers and not necessarily in other. And then for the transfer, For the transfer of density, there's some new language that's included in here. I think we might have actually taken this up. I took this, sorry, I left the flag. And then the last thing would be the retransfer of TDRs. So pretty straightforward concept. Once you have transferred your TDRs to the receiving site, that receiving site then can go through the same process to retransfer the TDRs.
Is there a limit to like one time, or can they do it multiple times?
There's no limit.
Still expires after 24 months.
No, it's in perpetuity once it's transferred. The certificate of eligibility is,
Got
it expires.
On the certificate of eligibility, when a sending site makes that request and the city approves it, at what point can the homeowner request a reduction in property value?
I mean, once, I don't know if that's something that can be done.
Because technically they're lowering the value of the property, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really would be something with the power.
Appraisal.
So then they have to petition the county to reduce their property value?
They probably just talk to the appraiser and see what you do.
But that's a great point.
This is brand new now.
Yeah, we don't have any other program for TDRs within the county, so it's,
So it's on the sending site to figure that out.
yes. Any other comments?
Any comments, questions?
I got some comments when you guys.
Yeah, me too.
Then
The
you-
public first?
You have a public, so why don't you go up to the microphone? Excuse me, what item are you here for?
I'm here for 420. I applied for a roof. Is there?
Oh, okay, we haven't talked about it, because nobody.
Oh, I'm
was here
sorry.
yet.
Yeah, I'm new to it. Just got
That's
out.
okay.
So I'm trying to learn the whole
Okay.
way around it.
Well, let us
So I
finish.
is not the right place.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead,
So can you go back to the
introduce yourself.
Jay Adams?
Okay,
Do you make the,
man who's gone through the process.
Going through it. So I just got this today at 3 o'clock.
We all do.
So let's start here. Receiving areas, core area. What's in the agreement? I'm gonna kind of pick this apart, you know, this is for non-residential. So non-residential means no residential. So residential is the only thing being built,
Right,
so it's kind of useless for this
where does it say non-residential though? These
in
are
the
all-
agreement.
In the agreement, okay.
In which agreement are you referring to?
Well, I got one today. I don't know if you've seen it or not. There's a draft.
that's the way it's currently written in the code, is the floor area, the transfer is non-residential floor area. You can also transfer density that you can incorporate into the additional floor area that you're receiving. It's,
Wait, say that again, please.
And the agreement has to be clear. So if the agreement's not clear, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't work.
No, I just want
You can say that again.
Tricia, could you repeat what you just said?
yeah, in the code today, it talks about floor area being able to transfer from, as non-residential floor area. You can also transfer density, which would be dwelling units, and put the two together to have additional development rights.
Additional residential development rights.
Well, there are two different options. You can transfer one or the other or both. So you can transfer floor area and that's it. And then it's non-residential. You don't get any additional units
Right.
as part of that transfer. You can add additional height. With this proposed change, you'd be able to increase your floor plate size. You could have larger units, but you can't have more
But
units.
to the point that was made, there's no residential development included in any of this.
There
and that's-
is, the other option to transfer is density.
So let me go there. The
Go ahead.
density, as I read it, is it units? They call it units. Is it density units per acre? Or is it in the pool of Broward County units? That's not clear either, at all. Do you know which it is?
Well, that's part of why we're making the change. So the old version has it strictly density, which means that you would have to go to a traditional residential zoning district, calculate the density, and take the extra density from the sending site to receive.
right, that's,
projects that are coming forward go to a pool of units, and that's why we're making a change, because it wasn't clear that that's the.
because there are units with Broward County in the pool, call it. They're not worth much now because Geller Acts, you can buy as many as you want for 10 grand each. So that's kind of puts the cap on what you can sell these for. That's one type of unit, but it's good to have both. So if you have density, if it's 50 units per acre, you can do 60 units per acre. I understand that. I think that's kind of clear, but the units, the pools and the density kind of get mixed up.
Correct. And we're correct.
Right. Anybody, I just got it and I haven't talked to anybody about it.
Well, you're
so-
talking, so you're talking about the agreement for your specific project, which is
No.
different. No,
I got a draft.
You're talking about the ordinance?
At 3
you
o'clock.
got a draft, you got a draft
Right.
of the ordinance, because you said
Right.
agreement when you got it there.
Ordinance draft.
Ordinance draft, okay. And you're saying that the ordinance draft would address the pool density issue?
I mean, I read it just this evening. And it seems very not clear to me. And this is a major thing. I mean, if you can do both, if it said you could do both, you can do the density and the units.
For one project.
So for instance, a sending site needs 2 more floors, let's say. But you can't send 2 more floors because it's residential.
Oh.
Except she's saying maybe you can because you can send units and that would give you 2 more floors, but it's not spelled out at all that way.
You send both, you would have to send both. to
So if you
achieve
send
that.
both, it somehow we need to spell that out.
The project that you are working with, the
Mhm.
Flowing Waters, is doing exactly that. They are purchasing both
I'll be right back.
the floor area
Right.
and the,
So in the prior agreement, it kind of made that happen a little easier. I just think it kind of gets it apart in this last one. Or show me, well, I'm gonna go through it with my attorney.
Mhm.
And,
we do have a follow-up meeting next week to
Right.
talk about
right,
things as well.
and because if we can't make these things valuable, anyway, they should be valued on what your land's worth, would be the ideal thing. Because you're gonna give up your land value, you're not gonna sell it for 30 years. So if you're in a high density area downtown, and your property's worth $10 million, you ought to probably get $10 million or close to it. If you've got a property that's only 5 units per acre, it's probably a little bit less. So your calculation, I think, lumps it all into the same kind of thing, right?
No,
So it's the size of the property times the FAR of 3,
there's two
divided by
different,
750,
there's
725.
two different parts of the calculation. One part of the calculation is specifically for floor area where you do need to produce a massing study
Okay,
in order to obtain what that floor area is that's eligible on that site to transfer. And then there is an actual calculation that would calculate the density. And I didn't show the floor area part on here with the calculation because it didn't change.
okay. Well, I mean, I went through it and I kicked out of the first one, so we did the 3 times FAR on mine, which it's like half of what I could get.
But you're not putting a value on anything, right? This just sets up however many units you can transfer or the density.
Or the square footage.
Bond determines the value.
But the formula is only just to calculate what you're eligible to transfer, right? That's irrespective of where the property is. As
Yeah.
long as it's a percentage side, right? And
Yeah,
I think
you are in a-
the market decides the value.
Yes.
Right.
But how many units you get is on this formula, which is number B, 5, and that's a one size fits all, which is not fair to a lot of people.
And that is where we put in the additional bonus. The compensate for that.
Okay, again, it's a one size for everybody. Everybody gets that bonus. I mean, it's a little something. I don't know. Some people it's good for, it's great for some people, and it's horrible for others. Because their land values are totally different.
It's what makes it,
So if you own a property in downtown where the zoning is 300 units per acre, and you own a property in Sutherland Bend, it's 5 units per acre. You both get the same number of units.
No,
Well, unless you do the calculation on the other one. I didn't really see that there was an option that you could also do a massing study and get more for your 300 unit rate
that's for floor area. The massing area is for floor
for
area.
units.
For units,
Which is
no,
what that
that's
is,
being
right?
taken away. No.
So B is for the number of dwelling units.
Yes, it's to calculate the number of dwelling units. A, B, and C all are related to calculation of dwelling units.
Okay.
The floor area section of the calculation.
Right, so for the units, everybody's in the same exact number of units, no matter what your property is.
No,
Well, it's the size of the property. Everybody goes by that formula, right?
yeah, it's based on the size of your property.
That's the only difference.
Yes,
Right, so if you're in a, again, 300 unit acre zoning
but we don't have
versus a
that.
5. What do you mean?
We don't have a 300 per acre zoning district.
Downtown is unlimited. What do you want to call it? They're doing 1,000 units per acre.
Yeah, so we are trying to create a standard for how you can calculate
Yeah, so let's do that.
units.
That's right.
That is it. For,
So I don't understand the logic that you're saying. So we have a standard way of calculating the development rights to be transferred from a property. You're suggesting that based on where a person is located in the city,
The same.
it should be a different standard.
Yes, because your property's worth way more.
No, see, it doesn't matter what your property is worth, it's development rights that's a pain to the
You
property.
can build a high rise in some zoning. You can only build 2 stories on others.
Right,
So the number of units is totally different.
right, but
You
that's
can build
based
on that site.
that's based on the actual property.
Right.
Right.
Every property's different.
So the calculation is a standard calculation, and depending upon where the property is located, determines how much,
There's no
right,
scale,
yeah.
there's no scale on this. This is all 3
there shouldn't
times
be a scale.
FAR.
Scale is depending upon the zoning district.
Well, isn't each transaction, so to speak, between the sending site and the receiving site is a separate transaction based on the values of that property?
I think
And
what
what
he's
the
suggesting is that there should be some differentiation between different zoning districts with respect to how many units or floor areas that they have. Is that what you're
Well,
suggesting?
the density, so if you've got a very high dense area downtown, so you can sell your land for 45,000 per unit. I have an acre, I can throw 400 units, it's $20 million. I have a property in Rio Vista, you can only build 1 home. That is worth 2 units, call it, times 50,000, it's 100 grand. So one's 10 million, one's 10 grand, I mean, it's.
So maybe I need to take a look. I mean, I know another attorney is looking at this, but now I'm very concerned because the transfer of development rights is you're only transferring what that property owner has a right to transfer to
Right.
build.
From the
That
from
property-
the
Right.
receiving side.
Right, so
That's
there's nothing that differentiates besides where they're located. If I'm entitled to build up to 300 units here, and I'm only entitled to build 20 here, and I'm not going to do that because I'm going to preserve this property, I transfer my excess units. I don't get a bonus because
No bonus.
this is located, but I don't understand.
It's whatever you can build on that site, whatever that person owns, and what they
So
can build on it.
What in the calculation limits you from transferring your excess? It should only be your excess. It's unlawful to do anything other than your excess.
No, so again, if you can design a building on your property, you can build 500 units on it.
Okay.
That's how many transfer development rights you get.
I think you're limited to 6, aren't you?
No, well, it's, okay, so.
Very few people are gonna have that.
no,
And
well,
you need to cap it somewhere too, because
No. I think I understand where you're coming from. So the pool, if you actually built, the pool gets diminished. So not everybody in that locale can build a 500 unit building. If someone gets those entitlements, it's reduced from the pool. And so the pool is reduced and you only have whatever you have left. And the next person up is limited by that. And that's part of the issue that we flagged was like, you have this area where you have a limited pool of units and people are grabbing them to transfer out the development rights. And then you don't get any development in those areas whatsoever because they've diminished the pool. Broward County Planning Council will be looking at us and telling us we're violating the comp plan by creating new units. And so we're limited.
Right, this is gonna not be many units, there's not many historic buildings are gonna step up and do this.
Okay.
It's not worth it. I'm hoping that we can make it worth it, more people can step up and do this. But the number of units, well, this county keeps getting more and more units out there for years, you can do the Geller Act. So in Northwest Wright Community, I think they have 24,000 units left, which is a lot, and some of them, Central City has 0. So it's so complicated, it's unbelievable, and I'm a world's expert on the zoning now. If you have the units, I think it should go to the historic building forever. And maybe limit it to 100, 200 or something, so you're not really, using too many, but it's saving historic building and they're being built somewhere else in the city. So I don't know why it would matter. The whole theory is you gotta save these historic buildings, and if you can't give them the units, or you're gonna take them away, you could get 50 units, you sell 10 of them, and then later on, like, oh, we don't have any more, and you've given your property away to the bank. You have to go to your bank. They put a lien against your building,
Right.
and you can't get refinanced. Try to refinance and sell your property. It's not easy. It's a big gift. So it's complicated. We need to go through it. I'm just pointing out a few things.
Given, given that, you obviously just got this afternoon, you're still gonna review it. Do you have a suggestion that we table this discussion for next month, or is?
Yeah, if you don't do this right, it's just not gonna work.
I have a suggestion, and Dwayne, I don't know if you and the other attorney dealing with this can do this, but you sit down with Jay and glean from his experience as actually the only person who's gone through the process.
So well, he can, but I understand the argument that's being made,
Okay,
and we philosophically disagree.
right.
And I think legally we have an issue, and I think trying to explain that is probably going to be the harder hurdle to come across. But fundamentally, the transfer of development rights means that the sending site has those development rights.
Right.
And so the issue that we've had with regards to these pool areas, and maybe I'm overstating your position, is, hey, the area has all these units that you can grab. Just give it to this historic property because we want to save it, regardless of whether or not you could actually build or develop it to that intensity. Just put it here because it's in this area, the historic property is here. Just give it to us and then we'll transfer it out because it makes it worthwhile for us. And we're saying legally, we have to demonstrate that those are actually the development rights that that property is entitled to. And the way that we do that is saying, can you actually develop that project on that site?
Right.
So
That's what
I
you're
agree with
getting.
that.
is it fair to say in summary that necessarily those sites don't have those units because they haven't been allocated out of the pool to that?
Correct. That's exactly what we're trying to kind of resolve.
So again, for that B there, if 2 properties are the same size, they both get the same number of units, no matter what the zoning is. So that's odd to me. I mean, again, it could be a single family residence, you
No,
can build.
if you're in a
That's what you
residential
said.
zoning district,
Okay.
then you already have a density assigned to your zoning district.
But that's
So
not.
if you're in, it's an A. It's already there,
So A would then kick in and you can't do B.
right, yeah, so
How
if
do
you're,
you know that?
Do we
Okay.
wanna like just table this discussion for next month and let you and your
Yeah.
attorney get some time to
Yeah,
go through this and then
Right.
maybe suggest some
This-
comments?
It- it's very complicated, and it's-
It is.
Presentation is to get feedback so that we can come back next month with additional information, additional changes. We're not intending to vote on this today.
Okay.
No,
And maybe we should next month if we have all this to discuss.
say that again, please.
Well, as Shane's saying, maybe we should still be discussing next month.
I mean, I
instead of
just think
voting.
if we just got it this afternoon and he'd
Yeah,
like his
it-
attorney to look at it.
And
Too
we do
soon.
have a meeting set up with Jay and Maggie and Jay's attorney next week.
What about the attorneys from the city?
It's with myself and one of the assistant city attorney that has
Okay.
been working on it.
It's really the zoning guys that,
But then should it come back here for then you for the discussion, you know?
Hopefully.
Yeah, and then
Well,
maybe
if
you
there's-
don't wanna vote on it yet.
I mean, that's up to the board to make that decision when it comes back to you next month,
Okay.
but we do, you know, we have to continue the discussion,
Okay.
we have to continue to move this along.
Right.
Is there really an action item here for us? This is-
Not today, it's just giving feedback so that, you know, we can keep refining
Okay.
the language. And then we would bring back an updated version
Okay,
next month.
great.
for-
And just the only comment I would have is I think it's great that you guys are making progress on it. I think it's great that you guys are working with people who are actually gonna utilize this and Jade's been the only one that's been consistently coming to these meetings to speak.
He has been, yeah.
I think it's an improved ordinance, it's more clear, developers need clarity. I mean, I think some of those comments that we had talked about, it was months ago, but they've been incorporated, increasing
Right.
the expiration to 24 months. And more clarity around how to define the number, I think it's an improved document.
The multiple transfer is, I think,
Yes.
it's what really is gonna help.
So do we need a
I
motion
agree.
to?
Do need a motion.
No, we
No,
don't
you
need
don't
a
need any
motion.
motion, we just brought this as a discussion item.
Okay.
I think Maggie wanted to.
Yeah.
To provide some comments as well.
Okay, yeah, so, I just, one of the comments I wanna make, especially since there's some Sailboat Bend here, and I'm from Sailboat Bend, is, developers have told small property owners, especially the size property owners in Sailboat Bend, if they don't have enough units, they're interested. Too much work, they have to, it's too expensive to try to do a contract for, you know, they need 20 of you.
Right,
And then that's $20 and 20 contracts, and it's just not worth it. And there are answers to this, so I'm asking that maybe when it comes time to put a communication through, that you ask maybe, because this is gonna take a lot more time, for the city staff to be able to look at some options for that. And, you know,
Maggie, if you're gonna be sitting in this meeting next week, or whatever it is,
but I
I
think you
think-
guys need to understand this.
pardon,
I think you guys need to understand.
right,
But I
Right,
am
you're
there,
saying, but
and this will be
that's where
added.
it should come up. yeah.
Right, it will come up. So I'm just saying, so there are some things like TDR banks, so it would be helpful if you could say, maybe ask the city commission. And because that takes a lot of time, you know, okay, here's this ordinance, and can also as a recommendation, because the direction was for a recommendation also. Could you have the city staff look at some options for small property owners and like TDR banks? New York City has a thing called land lot mergers. It's only for zoning and only for this purpose, no other purpose. And you can combine lots to be able to then market to developer, okay? And, you know, there's other things. I think Miami actually has a multiplier. So for some small, you know, some cities have for a multiple, you can see like ×4, ×5, because you're a small. But anyway, so just the communication for that, because otherwise it's not gonna work for Sailboat Bend or small business owners. Okay, so,
Maggie, I'm gonna have to call this, because we have one more issue to discuss
okay,
here.
so should we do this next week then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd
I
like
mean, I
to
hate to
see
do it
what,
when you're gonna
when it
vote.
comes back next month, yeah,
yeah, well, I mean,
with your input.
right, okay.
Yeah, we're not voting on anything today on that.
Well, I know, but I think that this is stuff that you guys should consider and be able to think about before you go and have the meeting when you vote. 'Cause there's-
We're not voting on this at all, I don't. This is-
Right, I'm not saying you are, I'm saying you, I think you need a month to think about it before you vote, so
Well,
that's
we
why I wanna
also,
bring
we
it up
also
to you.
need to know what comes out of the lawyers meeting.
Just for point of clarification. Even when this is all said and done. At what's the action item? You recommend it to the city
Yeah.
commission to
Right.
approve?
You're recommending, really, yeah, to the planning and zoning board and city commission, and then it has 3 additional public
So
hearings.
we're not the board that would say this is for sure or not, we
Right.
just recommend. to the-
Right, and your recommendations are important.
Yeah, of course, but I wanna make sure,
Yeah.
make sure everyone's on the same
Right.
page. We're not the ones that are actually approving it.
Right, but what you have to say about what you think about it, the city commission is going to rely on. as a source, as an important source.
Well, I'd rather comment on the final one, but at least I think you're getting your comments in now
Well,
towards the final one.
if we have comments that we wanna make, I think it's
Now's the time
now
to
so
do
it
it.
gets worked into whatever draft
Right.
goes to the city commission, cause they're not gonna take our comments and then revise it, they're just gonna approve or
Well, it
deny,
sounds
right?
like this meeting that's being scheduled will be very important,
Exactly.
Right,
more important than what we can contribute.
right, but then this meeting is only to go towards what you're gonna vote on.
Well, right,
Right, so I just think you need time. I think you need a month to consider these before you get to the meeting and vote on it. Because there's a lot to consider.
So I think what the chair is saying that that these comments are great to provide to the staff so that they can consider when
Right.
updating this draft ordinance.
Right, and they know some of these because we've talked about, and maybe we don't agree on things, so would like you to consider some things.
Yeah, we may come back and say, we didn't agree with staff on X, Y, Z.
We kind of already know
I
we
don't know
don't.
if you guys can
agree on
help us
some
out or
things.
not.
Yeah, like on
Yeah,
the,
well, how much more do you have on your list of suggestions for us to hear?
Well, I probably got 4 or 5 things, but one of them is probably more important than some of the others.
Could we, for 5 minutes?
just 5 minutes, yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so one is about the expiration date, and I know 24 hours is extra, but you know, there's no other cities in the United States that have an expiration date on their eligibility, and this is supposed to be based on Miami. Miami doesn't either, and actually I've got the city code here that goes, or a letter from a planner that says, no, we don't have an expiration date on our certificates of eligibility. And part of the and when you hear it, this is great on this one section because you're trying to explain, hey, this is not so, you know, it's not making a risk for you, but where you say the resident, if as long as it hasn't been added or removed from the property, you know, you haven't done any additions, then you know, it's gonna get approved. Or if the zoning district is changed, well, zoning things happens all the time, and if I'm a developer, I might put the fear of God into me right there. So what I'm saying is, I'll pass these out. It causes a problem because it's a risk. It causes more work for the person. And there was somewhere said that, well, our applications only stay open for 18 months, but this shouldn't be an application. This is a certificate. The application's over. So I don't see, okay, and also New York City doesn't have this, San Francisco, no cities do. They all have zoning changes. They all have a way more historic properties than we do that get additions put on them. And I think would be good to see how they handle it. One way New York City does it is they say, okay, they give you your certificate of eligibility. This is the number of units you can transfer. Come back to us when you're ready to do the deal. When you do the deal, then New York City reviews all of this. They make sure that you haven't done any additions or whatever at that time. And so then you don't have to do it for every property, because a lot of the properties won't ever do a transfer. They don't end up doing it. Some people aren't good at it. And then the other concern I have is that when we talked about this before, Tricia, are you still like, if Jay comes and he's got 100 units and he gets approved and you give him a certificate of eligibility to transfer 100 units to a receiving site, and the pool only has 100 units in it then, and another person comes and they want to get a certificate of eligibility, then you were saying that you were going to not allow them to be part of that market.
Yeah, we don't have any units available, and we would not issue a certificate of eligibility in
So
any particular.
in all of
redevelopment.
these cities, they have receiving sites. You can call them pools or whatever. And none of them try to align that. They let the market decide who gets to transfer because you know, you can allow somebody to be in the market. Like Jay, he has his 100 certificates, but maybe he's not very good at finding the receiver site because it's not easy. He spent a lot of time and he's had trouble, and he doesn't think he can find another developer there because they're too
Maggie,
hard
I'm
to
gonna have
find.
to cut you off because we're really running out of time. And these are important items, I know that, but I think they're more important to get to the people who are gonna be writing the ordinance.
Right. We just have a disagreement, and so when you send your communication, I would like you guys to weigh in on that.
We didn't vote on that though.
Right, you're just, right, but you can send a communication and say what you agree and disagree with in the ordinance.
And if I blackline an agreement, this ordinance, can that be shared with everybody?
If you do what?
So I'm gonna read their ordinance.
Right,
And I'm gonna make my
of course.
suggestions. And would like for Trisha to email it to everybody. You guys take a look at my changes. In your spare time.
It's an excellent idea if it's legal.
It's legal, it's fine.
So everything that she's saying and he's saying could come to us in an email between now and our next meeting.
Correct, and I think an opportunity to kind of explain, because
After our meeting.
what we're discussing here is very technical with regards to
Right.
Broward County. Broward County Planning Council and its comprehensive plan governs the number of units that are allowed within the county. They require us to be consistent in making our comprehensive plan and limit the density and the number of units here. The question with regards to, and I think it's gonna take a lot longer to kind of explain the misunderstanding that I
Okay.
hear here, which is, she's not saying that individuals with certificates, you can't have multiple individuals with certificates. What we're saying is that when we use up all the county's units that they gave us, that's it. And the certificate is us making sure that we're in compliance with Broward County. If we don't, the county finds us in non-compliant, and that's the issue. And so kind of explaining those real details with regards to planning here in Broward County. And I do appreciate looking at these other jurisdictions, but it's not the same.
So they won't replenish those units when you're out? I thought they told me at the county that when you get to zero, that they'll reallocate more units.
That is a lie. I'm sorry to say that, but that is an absolute lie.
Really? I'll have to share with you the email.
Okay.
I
Sure,
think I
sure,
have it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Guys, so you're gonna come back to us after your meeting and
Okay.
see what you come up with,
Okay.
okay? Give me the address again.
It's 420 Northeast 15th Avenue.
Okay.
The second item on the.
Yeah, I can't find it. Yeah, we have to, swear you in also.
You sign it?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, people, I'm a little new to this. Okay.
Sure. So this is gonna be case number UDP HP 25006, 420 Northeast 15th Avenue.
Yes, correct.
Would you like the staff report?
Please.
Can you go a couple more?
Well, let's find out if anybody went by the property. No.
No.
Okay,
I'm sure I'm doing fine.
yeah. Please make your presentation.
Yes, so.
Can you speak sworn?
Yes, it does.
Do you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And there's no disclosures we need.
So we're gonna do the staff report first. Gonna just give an overview to the board and then it's your turn. Okay. You can stay there. We'll just see a few minutes.
Good.
So the case number UDP HP 25006, located at 420 Northeast 15th Avenue. It's a single family residence, known as Mary Cutler House. And the request is to replace, pre-tap asphalt shingle roof with a new slate gray metal roof on a historic landmark. This property, like the brief background, this property was built in 1941 as a carriage house at the rear of a double lot located at 1500 Northeast 4th Place. The original site, known as the Mary Cutler House, consisted of two buildings. The main house, which served as Victoria Park's sole licensed private preschool, and the two-story accessory structure initially used as a garage apartment for domestic help, later repurposed as a rental property. So this entire site, including both structures, was designated as a local historic landmark by the city of Lauderdale in 2005 under resolution number 05214. And the Historic Preservation Board and City Commission determined that the property met criterion E for historic designation, specifically its value as a building recognized for the quality of its architecture and sufficient elements showing its architectural significance. And this historic landmark was identified as an example of vernacular folk style of architecture in Fort Lauderdale in South Florida. And it says something about this second structure. A second building on the property is a two-story wood frame building, front-facing gabled garage apartment built in Bahamian folk style. The second story overhangs the first, and this overhang was an open porch at one time, which has been enclosed with metal louvers. The original garage doors have been replaced with French doors. Some interesting facts about this secondary structure. In October 2018, the property owners applied for relief from the historic designation of the property at 1500 Northeast 4th Place due to economic hardship, and Historic Preservation Board recommended to the City Commission to deny the request, and the City Commission supported this recommendation of the board. So it was formally denied on November 20th, 2018, and on March 4th, 2019, under case number H19006, applicant submitted a request for the total demolition of this building, this substance building. And the application was reviewed, and Historic Preservation Board also denied this application, and the structure was saved. Later, this lot was subdivided.
Right.
So now we have two properties, but both of them were designated. That's the
Right.
problem with this property.
The front house is still existing?
Yes, it is, and it's a Mary Cutler house, the original
Right,
house.
okay,
And so accessory structure now has its own address at 420 Northeast 15th Avenue. And this, I mean, despite of these modifications, we believe that this building retain a high degree of integrity. And since there is another building on this site, which is a landmark, we believe that any re-roofing of the secondary structure must be evaluated in relation to the main house. The proposal is to replace existing 3-dap asphalt shingle roof. You can
right,
This is how it was subdivided. You can see that there was like one lot, now about two properties here. And the next slide is the re-roofing proposal. So the replacement, they want to replace existing roof with metal roof, which is slate gray color. And proposed material complies with Florida Building Code, specifically requirements for high velocity hurricane zones. So
maybe you can go right to the ending with the recommendations.
yeah, that's what I'm. So we believe that, we reviewed this application, and criteria for certificate of appropriateness under ULDR section 47-24 CI. The effect of the proposed work on the landmark of the property upon which such work is to be done. We think that the proposed roof replacement will impact the historic facade and architectural elements. According to the original permit record card, the roof was listed as a composition shingle roof, and the proposed standing seam metal roof does not have a historical basis and will alter the architectural style. A 3-dap shingles replacement would be more appropriate, matching the existing design and roofing material of the related landmark. And second comment was about the deteriorated architectural features shall be repaired rather than replaced. This is recommendation from the United States Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. And we think that in the original architectural plans, the roof covering material is listed as composition shingle roof. A more appropriate replacement would be an asphalt shingle roof, aligning with the existing design as the historic landmark designation applies to the entire site and the garage apartment structure complements the main house through the use of materials. Any re-roofing of the secondary garage apartment structure must be evaluated in relation to the main house. Both these criteria, like application does not meet those criteria. And staff funded the application for certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 25006 located at 420 Northeast 15th Avenue does not meet the criteria as outlined in sections 47-2411D3CI and 47-2411D3CII.
Great, thank you very much.
All right,
Please introduce yourself.
thank you. My name is Nicholas Fantasy. Me and partner, we bought this house. So first of all, thank you for your dedication for the preserving of the history, because I've been living in Victoria Park for the past 7 years. The changes I see in the construction, the way they come demolish and change everything is outstanding. So we bought this because my son goes to Virginia, so it's like 10 minutes walk from where we currently live. So we were looking for somewhere close by to the school, so we got this property. And we thought we could have had it demolished and build a new house. And then I got that email from
Tricia, probably.
say, hey, no, you cannot touch this. And I kept sending email to Tricia. That's me, by the way. Okay. So we find out about the situation and it's like, okay, can I build another house in front? I say, no, we cannot. So I went over just to go to get the whole property because the location is perfect for us. So now we in 1 month in with our deposit, everything is just to go through the process. We couldn't get insurance because the insurance said no, because of the year, the house is too old, the roof is almost 20 years, we're not gonna give you insurance until you come in and show us that you have a contract, that you have a roofer, contractors ready to get it fixed in 60 days.
Right.
So that's the main reason why
That's why
I
you're
have,
here today.
yes, because I needed to get the insurance. I already have my
So you
deposit.
need a decision either way at this point to go ahead.
Exactly.
Okay.
And fast forward, if you look on the top right in the picture, you're gonna see electrical transformer right there.
Right.
So when we got our the quote from the roofer and they proposed this, and I asked them which one would be safer because I work for coastal construction, construction, and recently we had a incident, one of those electrical transformer blew and landed in our showroom
Oh,
and burned the entire place. So we're trying to see if we can get as much, I want to preserve things, but I want it to be safe. And I asked them which one is safer in case if there's any fire or anything. It was like, hey, the metal roof will probably be better. So that's the main reason. And also, I think the roof is only 20 years, it's not history.
right.
And by the way, the other properties for sale, I'm pretty sure the other buyers gonna have the same problem.
Sure.
You know, the insurance not gonna go for it if the roof is almost 20 years. So they're probably gonna come here and ask to get
And
the,
you get more like 50 with the metal roof.
yes, so that's the reason we're trying to get something.
All right,
there.
let us discuss
Yes.
this so we can move it
Okay.
ahead. Anyone want to jump in? Any comments, questions? I mean,
Question, I recall last month, what was the year that a metal roof became marketable or came on the
well,
market?
they said it was available in the 40s, was it?
It's more than earlier,
Was it earlier?
it's like the 20s.
So a metal roof was available in the 20s, 30s, 40s at the time.
Well, we don't know how available.
No, but yeah, but it was at least one,
Right.
right?
I think that's what
Okay.
we completed last month.
Right? And that was my question.
Okay.
I didn't remember.
Well, I'll jump in and as we said on other projects that have come before the board,
Okay.
we've approved a number of metal roof projects for residential, mainly because the longevity and the upkeep is much, much better for a homeowner over the long term. So I don't see why this project should be any different. Jump in, please.
I totally, listen, there's always that debate of, you know, preserving the historic value and the architecture, the whatever the right word is, the materials, give it its authenticity from its original form. That is the ultimate pure goal. However, times change, money changes, issues change, family value, even safety issues, hurricanes, all these things, to get insurance. There's things we can't just, you know, put our head in the sand on. Hurricane windows and tinting and things of this nature, being responsible to the environment and saving energy requires change. I'm in agreement with what's your name again? I'm in agreement with Arthur that the metal roof, I don't know if it does coincide with the year that this house was built, but even if it doesn't, in the interest of preserving the general purpose and long-term assurance that this building will be standing, I say we approve it.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what we talked about last month. I think the fact that the homeowner is willing to invest in a metal roof, which is gonna last longer, may help preserve other parts of this historic home as well.
Exactly.
Which can be beneficial as well. So I'd be in favor.
Any other comments?
I would add that this property is on the same one historic landmark site. So it's coinciding with another structure that has the asphalt shingle roof currently, and it's owned by another property owner.
Can we make it a stipulation that when the other property owner wants to change his roof, he has to match this one?
I don't know.
And generally,
Well,
when
he'll
you're
be in the same spot.
replacing that roof, and you're not going to replace it with the original materials, it should be a compatible
Right.
material, which this is not
Yeah.
the correct method, just for the record.
You know, we come across this almost every meeting. And I know we've always asked, we need more guidance on this issue because, I mean, we've set a precedent on the board and we've approved a number of these metal roofs. Maybe not straightforward in a coherent line, but it just seems to, as Tim said, it seems to make most sense
Well,
today.
you know, there's two sides to this argument, and
I
it
know.
always comes back to money. If there was a shingle roof or a similar roof that looked like shingles, that did the same job as metal, and it was dollars to dollars, then we'd have something to talk about.
Oh, we don't.
But a shingle roof is it looks authentic, but it's not the same. And it's not as strong and it's not as longevity and it doesn't make as much practical sense, makes much more sense according to the guidelines. We do have the ability to wiggle it and make our recommendation. And my particular feeling on the matter is the trade-off is not changing the architectural front of the building or anything, we're just putting a metal
So
roof
in
on it.
view of the hour, who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. Who can help me with this?
Last paragraph.
If you look at the bottom of
Just read the last one.
Where am I at? Oh, I'm over here. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriation for major alterations of the case number UDP HP 25006 located at 420 Northeast 15th Avenue, based on the following findings of fact. In other words, based on the facts and findings outlined in the staff memorandum. And the conditions apply, subject to the following conditions. And I state the application conditions on the record. But that would be the application is subject to approval by the building and zoning
Right.
and all ULDR requirements.
Correct.
Am I done?
You're done.
Thank you.
You done good? Do we have a second?
So your staff report was
supportive of that.
No,
If you
they
wanna,
don't.
if you wanna say based on findings of fact,
Do we have a-
testimony we heard.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I
need to
do
revise it.
Revise the motion.
To support Tim's
It
position.
states, instead of saying based on the staff report, it's based on the testimony that we heard today.
Okay, I'd like to make a correction to that motion. It is not based on staff reports, it's based on the testimony that we heard today.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Last.
The motion carries. Congratulations. You didn't even hear me.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Good luck. And with that, we will close the meeting. Until next month. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'd just like to say thank you to Richard Rosa for his service over the past
Appreciate you.
8 or
Yeah.
so.
Thank you.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'll move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, good.
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
Great.